Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Usmakarang Saparitajagacharya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna and welcome all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind attendance. as we proceed to associate with Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we're going to be covering verses 18 to 31, quite a few verses, very wonderful verses. So let us begin. Om Jnanatimi Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunatamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarobhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Payusha, Sarva Vedeka Satphala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokai Triprada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Jandu Adidaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasha Rayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namaste. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you one attains transcendental bliss. For yourself was the impure love of God upon the Vidya. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mat Sangim Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahin Atini Chochataraka Ham Hanamun Chakada Chinmam Premna Ritkatayospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to unsaintly, O uplifter very fallen, please do not ever leave me, please become manifest in Mahatma throat, accompanied by love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya Yatonvayaditarata Charte Swabhignaswarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risham Damna Swena Sadani Rastakokam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primary cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, destructions, or manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land is seen on water. Only because of him the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpasha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagyupadrita. O learned one, this energy Kali. Men have but short lives, they're quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayan Namaskruta Narachevam Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jain Mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God and Narayan. Unto Narayan, the supermost human being, and Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai Pumso Parodormo Yatabhaktiradok Shaja Ahituka Pratyata Yatma Suprasiditi, the supreme occupation dharma for all humanities, that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Savairagyam Yanam Chada Haitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personhood of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes, knowledge, and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learn the transcendentals who know the absolute truth. Call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shuru Shuru Shroshadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtan Shevanat. O to wise-born sages, or by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains plenty for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hryadanta Stovya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and a benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, develop the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues, when properly heard and chanted. Nastapayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. By regular attendance in the classes of the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the person of the Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us cover some feedback from last week's session, verses 11 to 17. If anyone can share feedback, what you remember, what you recall, even the power statement that we covered from Srila Prabhupada. If there's anything that comes to your mind, please share that in the chat. Nothing comes to the mind of the devotees. So what comes to my mind was Prabhupada's power statement. Prabhupada makes it very clear, wonderful statement. Prabhupada says, devotees suffering gives the devotees an opportunity to think of Krishna with rapt attention. So that's a very wonderful statement, and we should try to remember. Prabhupada's making very clear. The suffering that devotees go through is really an opportunity for us to focus on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Naturally, our life is meant to be dedicated for the service of the Supreme Lord. But in the conditioned state, being in this material world, suffering is definitely a very, very good impetus. Why? Because very often as conditioned souls, we don't take advantage, or we're not fully realized to take advantage during good times to remember the Supreme Lord. Because by nature, we are conditioned to avoid Krishna. So therefore, suffering is a very wonderful lesson and opportunity for us to reflect. Why am I suffering? Why am I in this position? Why do I have to go through this? And then when we have proper guidance of Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that it's actually meant for us to remember the Supreme Lord. Shamananda Prabhu says, we see how Arjuna is relating so many events in relation to Krishna. This is what we strive for. So somehow always remember and glorify the Lord. Yes. The specific section that we're covering is revealing what happens if we are separated from Krishna and how a devotee deals with difficult situations, that may be traumatic, like Arjuna's case, like the Pandavas' case. What do? Do they amplify the trauma? Do they blame circumstances? Do they blame others? Do they question why this is unfair? And from Arjuna, we can perfectly understand that when a devotee is placed in difficulty, he does not reflect on the difficulty. We see how Arjuna is reflecting on, he's reflecting on the aspect of gratitude and seeing all the events in his life with Krishna, and he's being grateful for that. So it's an interesting perspective for us to adopt. Whenever we're in a difficult situation, reflect on the aspects that we can be grateful for. And if you really see, you'll be able to find in every situation something that you're grateful for in relation to Krishna. Mother Sharon says, Hare Krishna, please accept Mahabharata obeisance. Krishna is in the heart. When you call out to him, he responds in his independent way. Yes, Krishna is the supremely independent autocrat, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj describes. Therefore, how he deals, we should have firm faith. It is perfect. It is perfect for you. And how Krishna deals with you is totally different from how Krishna deals with me, because we are completely individuals, completely different individuals. Our love is unique. Every single one of us have a unique relationship with Krishna. And Krishna is seeking the love of every living entity. Just like a parent seeks the love of each of his children, because they're each unique and they each bring with them, even though the fundamental basis is loving their parents, but each one brings a unique flavor. So Krishna reciprocates with each and every one of us on an individual basis, according to our maturity of that love, according to our past karma. Whatever we require, Krishna will reciprocate to respond appropriately. Rasaraj Prabhu says, how Krishna helped the Pandavas in various ways, the devotees of the Lord. Yes, Arjuna was reflecting on this. So today we're going to be covering 18 to 31. There's two sections. First section, 18 to 23, remembering the intimate moments Arjuna felt void in Krishna's absence. And then the second section, 24 to 31, Arjuna focuses on the Lord's instructions and attains transcendence. Text 18. Mother Sharina says, we must have sincere dedication to service. We must do our best. The result is up to Krishna. Yes. We serve to our best capacity and leave the rest in Krishna's hands. And his hands are always, always, always perfect. Whatever Krishna administers, we should learn to cultivate the attitude of gratitude, the attitude of acceptance, that yes, Krishna knows best. We find throughout the Mahabharata, there are many situations where Krishna would instruct. Krishna would give an instruction, and people would challenge. People would, think, but why is Krishna saying that? Why is Krishna doing that? Well, because Krishna knows. He's all-knowing. Krishna knows best. And because he knows best, then really we should simply be submissive to Krishna's instructions. If Krishna decides otherwise, that means if Krishna decides that your role is to be non-submissive. For example, we find in the Mahabharata, there are personalities that go against Krishna. We find in the Ramayana, Kaikai going against Lord Ram, or even in terms externally, in terms of she is really against Ram, although she truly loves Ram. So there may be situations or in Krishna's pastimes where Krishna decides that you need to play a certain role that seems unfavorable. But that is up to Krishna. We should have a favorable intent. Anyabilasita sunyam jnana karmane vidam anukulyana Krishna anushilan bhakti uttama. So we should have a favorable intent for serving Krishna favorably. And then when we come to the level of pure devotion, how Krishna then decides how we should serve, that's up to him. Text 18. Narma yudara ruchi smita sobitani ye partahirjun nasake kurunan daneti sangjal pitani naradeva ridis sprarsani smartu lutanti hridayam mamamad davasyam. O king, his jokings and prank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me as O son of Pritha, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, are all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Text 19. Savya sanatan vikatano boja dishvam aikyad vayasya ritavan iti vipralamba lamdam sakyu sakeva ritavatana yasya sarvam Sahe mahan mahitaya kumater agamme. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit and loiter together. And at the time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry, sometimes if there were any irregularities, I used to reproach him by saying, my friend, you are very truthful. Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he, being the supreme soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is all perfect, his transcendental pastimes with his pure devotees never lack anything in any respect, either as a friend, son, or lover. The Lord relishes the reproaches of friends, parents, or fiancé more than the Vedic hymns offered to him by great learned scholars and religionists in an official fashion. So when scholars offer Krishna prayers, then generally these prayers, the foundation of these prayers is intellectualism. It is based on the head. It's not based on the heart. When Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees, like Arjuna, it is not just the head that's acting. It's not just the hands that are acting, but it is founded and based on the heart that is acting. So Krishna, he loves when devotees respond more from the heart than just on the platform of the head or hand. You can see that there are those who can serve Krishna, and generally those in the state of sadhana bhakti, we serve Krishna predominantly with our hands. Hands mean our limbs. So we engage our limbs in serving Krishna, like making garlands, washing the temple, distributing books, different activities, physical activities. We are engaging on that level. Then there may be the engagement of our intelligence. But we want to come to the level of engaging our heart. The stage of bhava. Bhava bhakti means on the level of the heart. The heart needs to become mature. The heart needs to be molded. The heart needs to be filled with pure devotion to Krishna. So we may start with our hands, then with our head, but eventually we want to go to the extent of engaging our heart. When we engage our heart, our head and our hands, our intellect and our physical services all align and are imbued with pure devotion. And Krishna appreciates that which comes from the heart far, far, far more than what comes from the head or from one's hands. 20. Soham ripan pendra rahita purushottamena sakhya priyena suridaridayena sunyam advain advan yukrum yurukrama parigramham angaraksham goper asadbir abha levam mini vini rich tosmi. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel coward men while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. So Arjuna is now recognizing and missing that association of Krishna. Krishna and Arjuna had a wonderful personal relationship based on friendship. So Krishna naturally was the best of friends to Arjuna. And now when Krishna is not there, naturally, Arjuna feels that void. We need to progress on the path of bhakti when we recognize that void. Most people in this world don't even recognize that there's a void. They don't even recognize that that void is due to Krishna not being there, due to not loving or remembering Krishna. They think that they are complete, they're happy, and they're successful. But without Krishna, there is a big hole that is there in our heart. Prabhupada in this purport says, the important point in this verse is how it was possible that Arjuna could be defeated by a gang of ignoble coward men, and how such mundane coward men could touch the bodies of the wives of Lord Krishna, who were under the protection of Arjuna. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has justified the contradiction by research in the Vishnu Puran and Brahma Puran. In these Puranas, it is said that once the fair denizens of heaven pleased Ashtavakra Muni by their service and were blessed by the Muni to have the Supreme Lord as their husband. Ashtavakra Muni, there's a picture of Ashtavakra Muni there, was curved in 8 joints of his body, and thus he used to move in a peculiar curved manner. The daughters of the demigods could not check their laughter upon seeing the movements of the Muni, and the Muni, being angry at them, cursed them that they would be kidnapped by rogues, even if they would get the Lord as their husband. Later on, the girls again satisfied the Muni by their prayers, and the Muni blessed them that they would regain their husband even after being robbed by the rogues. So, in order to keep the words of the great Muni, the Lord himself kidnapped his wives from the protection of Arjuna. Otherwise, they would have at once vanished from the scene as soon as they were touched by the rogues. Besides that, some of the gopis who prayed to become wives of the Lord returned to their respective position after their desires was fulfilled. After the departure of Lord Krishna, he wanted all his entourage back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions only. So this scene is at, you could say, the final chapter of Krishna's pastimes. Krishna established Dharma, Yudhishthir, and after the battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna now has to round up his pastimes. And Krishna would round up his pastimes in different leelas in different ways. We find in Ramayana, Lord Ramachandra and his associates, they just go into the, I think the Surya River, they walk into the river, and in this way they unmanifest. Here in the Mahabharata, Krishna descended with all his associates in the different holy dhams, Dwarka, Mathura, Vrindavan. The demigods also appeared as associates of the Lord. Some combined with the eternal associates of the Supreme Lord. And now the Lord needs to round up his pastimes. So in order to round up his pastimes and take all his associates back to the spiritual world, Krishna performed these different pastimes. And here, taking and honoring the curse of Ashtavakra Muni, Krishna actually became those coward men that attack Arjuna. So externally now, if you look at the situation and if you read the pastime, Arjuna was asked to go and take the queens of Dwarka to a safe place, because Dwarka is going to be submerged under the ocean. And Arjuna is now taking the queens for shelter. And while he's taking the queens of Krishna, they are attacked by some coward men. And Arjuna, who was a powerful warrior, could not, in fact, was defeated by the coward men. And his queens were taken away. So externally now we see that, hold on, this is such an unfortunate event, firstly, that the queens are being taken away. Secondly, we see Arjuna being defeated. Even Arjuna couldn't appreciate or understand what's happening. So on one level, we see one perspective, but now from Prabhupada's purport, we are seeing a higher perspective. We're seeing that actually it was Krishna who appears as the coward man, fulfilling and honoring the sages Ashtavakra Muni's curse and taking away the queens back to the spiritual world. We may, on the lower perspective, criticize the coward men. How can they do this? Don't they know this is Krishna's wives? I mean, just see how fallen they are, how degraded they are. Or we can look at Arjuna and say, but just see, here is Arjuna, Gandhivadari. Just see, he was so powerful in the battlefield, and now just see, he's impotent. He can't even protect the queens of Dwarka. So we could start going and criticizing, etc., in different situations. But when we understand that there's always a higher perspective to what we perceive, then we become more introspective to try to understand what is Krishna's plan, what is Krishna's hand in this situation. When you understand Krishna's hand in the situation, your perspective changes. So we want to dial into Krishna's perspective. When we see any situation in this world, we should not to be quick to judge, to criticize, to condemn, or even to interpret. Rather, we want to press the pause button, step back, and ask the question, what is Krishna's hand in this situation? If we are not advanced enough to see Krishna's hand, then even we should, instead of responding, pray to Krishna to please reveal to us what is your hand. What do you want us to learn? Because each of us may have a different lesson to learn in every situation. Some of us may have learned the lesson already in our past, and therefore it may be a refresher. Some of us may have learned the lesson already, and therefore it's a new lesson that we need to learn to mold and grow in our devotion to Krishna. So when we believe that Krishna is in control of every situation, including our situation, then we want to see Krishna's hand. What does Krishna want me to learn in this situation that will nurture our devotion and not destroy it? So Arjuna, he was surprised that he could not protect the queens of Dwarka. And here we see, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's research, that on another level, it was all Krishna's doing. And therefore, we appreciate that this is Krishna's intervention, Krishna's way of bringing the queens back to the spiritual world. And like that, we may be in many situations. Even in Krishna's pastimes, there may be many situations where apparently it seems on one perspective, which everyone is seeing, it's unfavorable. On another perspective, it's glorious. Consider Kaikeyi banishing Lord Ram to the forest. Many, many, many years. On one level, it's an unfortunate event. The whole of Ayodhya is lamenting. Dhritarashtra, Dashrath Maharaj is very, very upset with Kaikeyi. At the same time, on another level, it's a display of great love, loving reciprocation with Lord Ram. Because Lord Ram wanted to be banished. Lord Ram wanted to go to the forest so that he could associate with the sages and ultimately conquer and kill Ravana. So on one level, it seems unfortunate. On another level, it's glorious service. 21. Tadve danusta ishav vasarato hayaste soham ratindri patayo yata anamanti sarvam shanena tadabud asat ishariktam bhashmam hutam kuhaka radam evoktam usham. I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrows, the same chariot drawn by the same horses, and I use them as the same Arjuna, to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them, at a moment's notice, have become null and void. It is exactly like offering clarified butter on ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on barren land. So the previous verse, Srila Prabhupada has revealed to us that there may be different perspectives to a situation. And the perspectives that we want to appreciate is Krishna's perspective. We're really not interested in any other perspective. Like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Samaj would comment, if you ask someone a question or situation or advice, and somebody says, I think. As soon as you hear that they say, I think, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj says, you should tell them, please pause, please stop, do not complete what you want to say. Open the cupboard, put them in the cupboard, close the cupboard, and now you can tell them, please complete your statement. Because we're not interested in what you think. We're interested in Krishna's perspective. That is of paramount and absolute importance for us. Even how we respond to situations, how we think of situations. In the material world, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's a question of what pleases Krishna. Now you have to be connected to Krishna to appreciate and understand what pleases Krishna. If you're not connected to Krishna, just like if I don't have a direct line to Krishna, then I really don't know what pleases Krishna. And I might think that what I'm doing or what I'm saying is pleasing Krishna, and it may not. It may not. And if I am not connected to Krishna, then instead of giving some advice or trying to act or trying to adjust or trying to rectify a situation, rather focus the energy on yourself. Rather focus that energy on you taking the next step to get that connection. Because Krishna consciousness is a journey to get that connection 100% connected. We don't want any interference. We want that connection with Krishna. Now, so that was in the previous verse. In this verse, Arjuna is giving us a perspective of how we should be thinking about a scenario or situation. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving us the fact that there can be different perspectives or different levels of a situation. And here in this verse, Arjuna is revealing to us how we should see a situation if we are in that situation of helplessness. Arjuna was helpless. He couldn't figure out, I have the same bow, the same arrows, the same chariot, the same horses. I'm the same person. It's not like I became impotent. Not like I lost the knowledge. And yet, it seemed like in fact, I was totally, I failed in performing the service. And the example is very wonderful given here. It's like offering clarified butter into ashes, not into a fire. You can put as much butter you want in ashes. It's a waste of butter. Accumulating wealth with a magic wand, it's illusory money. Or sowing seeds on barren land, it's not going to fructify. Total waste of energy, resource, and time. Arjuna is saying when we're in that situation, we should understand that the reason I cannot give valuable input in this situation, I cannot really render valuable service, I've lost my potency, I'm not successful, it's because of the absence of the Supreme Lord. So he's linking it to Krishna. In every situation, we want to link the event, the situation, whether good or bad, to Krishna. When we do that linking, that is Krishna consciousness. We want to see our life, all the events in our life, in relation to Krishna. We want to be educated and we want to see our education in relation to Krishna. Just like Srila Prabhupada told the devotees, they asked Prabhupada, can we teach children, about biology? about, for example, growing botany, about growing plants? And Prabhupada said yes. But you always link it to Krishna. So for example, the plant is growing and the plant is taking sunshine, and due to sunshine, there's photosynthesis. The plant is taking oxygen and giving carbon dioxide. So then the question we should get the children to appreciate and understand is, how is this happening? Who's making this arrangement? Who told the plants to take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide? And who told you to take oxygen and give out carbon dioxide? So who told the plants to consume carbon dioxide and give off oxygen? That's the right system. And who told you to breathe in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide? It's Krishna. So in that way, you've linked the plant, simple example of a plant, to Krishna. You linked yourself to Krishna. That way, as we practice to do that, then slowly and surely every situation in our life will be linked to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Prabhupada in the purport says, as we have discussed more than once, one should not be puffed up by borrowed clones. All energies and powers are derived from the Supreme Source, Lord Krishna, and they act as long as he desires and cease to function as soon as he withdraws. So Prabhupada is refreshing our memory. And Prabhupada has made this point, as he's saying in the purport, again and again and again. The reason why Prabhupada is to keep repeating this point is because we forget again and again and again. And the point is that all energies and powers, all abilities, all potencies, everything that we have at our disposal to act is coming from Krishna. He's the Supreme Source. We may be thinking, I have a great memory. I'm a very good musician. I have such musical talent. I'm such a great orator. I can speak so wonderfully. I can collect so much funds. So all these different abilities that we have, all these talents that we have, we may be thinking that these are my abilities. I've cultivated them. I've spent so much energy in learning them. They're my energies, they're my potencies, they're my abilities. And therefore, however I employ them, the results of all that is due to me. Prabhupada is warning us, no, Krishna has given you those abilities. Krishna is the source of those abilities and talents. And he's giving you the opportunity to engage them in his service. And therefore the results are meant for his pleasure. And if Krishna wants, he can withdraw those abilities, those talents at an instant. So when we understand that, we do not become proud, we don't become puffed up. We are always humbled and we always are grateful to Krishna that we are able to render such service. We're able to use these abilities in his service. All electrical energies are received from the powerhouse. And as soon as the powerhouse stops supplying energy, the bulbs are of no use. So with the bulbs, Krishna is the powerhouse. When there's power, we are able to achieve or show brilliance. And if Krishna decides, let me switch off the powerhouse, cut the power, then no matter how beautiful the bulb is, no how attractive and fancy it is, it'll not light up. So Krishna's the powerhouse. Krishna's the live wire, the electricity that's there in that wire. It is Krishna. his potencies, his energies, his abilities. In a moment's time, such energies can be generated or withdrawn by the supreme will of the Lord. Material civilization without the blessing of the Lord is child's play only. Material civilization without the blessing of the Lord is child's play only. As long as the parents allow the child to play, it is all right. As soon as the parents withdraw, the child has to stop. Consider child goes to the beach and then he starts to build this amazing sandcastle and he's proud. Oh, just see, I built this beautiful sandcastle. It's so wonderful. The parents know that firstly, the waves can come and totally destroy that sandcastle. It is totally insignificant. The parents also know that soon time is going to be up and we'll have to leave. And therefore that sandcastle really has no permanent situation, no permanent life. If the child is attached to that sandcastle and does not want to go with the parents, the parents will just destroy that sandcastle and then take the child. So without Krishna's blessings in our life, this material civilization is very, very fickle, temporary, and as Prabhupada says, child's play. We always want to seek and have Krishna's blessings with us. And through our attitude, through our consciousness, through our thinking, through our acts, we can attract and retain Krishna's blessings. Just like right now we are hearing from Srila Prabhupada and associating with Srimad Bhagavatam. That means we're attracting Krishna's blessings in the form of Bhagavatam. When we honor Krishna's words, when we honor the words of the Bhagavatam, then we retain the blessings. And in this way, we progress in our life. Human civilization and all activities, therefore, must be dovetailed with the supreme blessing of the Lord. And without this blessing, all advancement of human civilization is like a decoration on a dead body. Unfortunately, people in this world who are visionaries, who are leaders, do not understand this point. You can advance materially to great heights. You can achieve amazing technological advancement. Minus Krishna, it is lifeless, it is dead, it is useless, it is child's play. It's basically a breeding ground for suffering. But we can use technology and advance technology to great heights and add Krishna in there. And when we add Krishna, when we add Krishna's blessings, now that technology becomes valuable, becomes useful, becomes a blessing from Krishna so that we can offer greater service. For example, Prabhupada built 108 temples in 10 years. He had built 30 temples in 1 month. Naturally, there had to be resources. They had to move, even building materials through technology. So it wasn't that they did not use technology to build the temples. They did. And that technology, whatever was used, Prabhupada used a dictaphone in dictating Srimad Bhagavatam. He used technology in the service of Krishna. That is the proper use of Krishna's energies. It is said here that a dead civilization and its activities are sometimes like clarified butter on ashes. the accumulation of money by a magic wand, and the sowing of seeds in the barren land. So if we advance, if we achieve any results, do anything without Krishna's blessings, then it is a waste of energy, waste of resources. From Krishna's perspective, there is no loss. Why? Because we know the law of energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's just transformed one form to another. So for Krishna, he's always complete. The energies just get transformed. The loss is on our side. The loss is on our side. Why? Because firstly, it's not our energies. So we are getting the energies from Krishna. We are getting the abilities. We are getting the potencies from Krishna. And if we do not take the opportunity to use those energies favorably in Krishna's service, then that is our loss. If we use the energies favorably for Krishna, then we get Krishna's blessings. So the loss is on our side and not for Krishna. 22 and 23. Rajams Tvayanu Prishatanam Suridam na Surit Pune Pure Viprasapa Vimudana Nignatam Mushti Bir Mita Varunim Maddiram Pitva Modamatita Chetasam Agnanatam Ivan Yonyam Chatur Pancha Vasheshita. O King, since you have asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwarka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmanas. And as a result, they all became intoxicated with wine made of purified rice and fought among themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now, all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. Praye naitad bhagavata ishwarasya vicheshtitam mito nignanti bhutani bhavayanti chayanmita. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. Purport. According to the anthropologists, there is a nature's law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. But they do not know that behind the law of nature is the supreme direction of the supreme personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the law of nature is executed under the direction of the Lord. Whenever, therefore, there is peace in the world, it must be known that it is due to the good will of the Lord. And whenever there is upheaval in the world, it is also due to the supreme will of the Lord. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So now Prabhupada is giving us a very fundamental law that people know, but very few people realize. This statement that not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. Not a leaf, in the Quran it says, not a leaf falls to the ground without the sanction of Allah. So people know that. But then they get so entrapped and caught up in situations that they forget this basic principle. So in our own life and around us, we have to understand that every situation is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Now, the will of Krishna will always be successful. Krishna has a certain desire, and that desire will always manifest. Krishna is independent, and therefore he can change his desire. Prabhupada writes that when a pure devotee, Krishna has a certain direction. See, Krishna has a certain will and a certain desire for something. But if the pure devotee decides otherwise, that means even though the pure devotee always desires what Krishna wants, if the pure devotee desires otherwise, and pure devotee thinks it'll be nice if we could do like this, or if this could be the situation, Prabhupada writes that Krishna wants to also fulfill that desire. So Krishna's happy to change his desire to accommodate the desire of the pure devotee. So this can also be there. But the fundamental point that Prabhupada is revealing is whether there's let's say there's the summer season or whether there's the winter season, whether things are going very well or whether things are not going very well within the world. It is the will of Krishna. Whenever, therefore, there is disobedience of the established rules enacted by the Lord, there is war between men and nations. The surest way to the path of peace is therefore dovetailing everything to the established rule of the Lord. The established rule is that whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever we sacrifice, or whatever we give in charity must be done to the full satisfaction of the Lord. No one should do anything, eat anything, sacrifice anything, or give anything in charity against the will of the Lord. So Krishna has a will, Krishna has a certain desire, how he wants things to go. We have minute independence to decide otherwise. If we choose to do as Krishna wills, Krishna desires, then that's favorable. If we choose otherwise, it is not what Krishna wants. So it's not Krishna's desire for us to do the wrong thing. But Krishna will sanction your wrongdoing. So for example, here Prabhupada is making the point that you should not eat anything that is not pleasing to Krishna. It's not Krishna's will. But you have minute independence, and Krishna will always give you that minute independence. So you abuse that minute independence and you eat something unfavorable that displeases Krishna. So when you eat something unfavorable that displeases Krishna, it is not that Krishna wanted you, and it is not at Krishna's will that you had to eat something unfavorable. It's not Krishna's will, it's not Krishna's desire. But because Krishna will never obstruct your independence, Krishna sanctions you doing the wrong activity. That is the role of the super soul. Otherwise, that activity would not have happened. You will not be able to eat that which is unfavorable if Krishna did not sanction. So Krishna does not interfere. Krishna sanctions you do the wrong thing. At the same time, because you have transgressed this foundational rule that you are not doing what is pleasing Krishna, or something that brings Krishna's blessings, then Krishna's also created fundamental laws in creation. As you sow, so shall you reap. So because you eating something that is devoid of Krishna's blessings, then that result of that activity is that you will get an reaction devoid of Krishna's blessings. That means you will suffer the consequence. If you do something that's pleasing to Krishna, that's aligned to Krishna's pleasure, his blessings, then as you sow, so shall you reap. Krishna sanctions that activity. Krishna's happy with that activity. And therefore that activity will bring with it a reaction which has Krishna's blessings. So Prabhupada is telling us, as in Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, whatever we do, whether it is through our physical hands, legs, our body, whether it's through the senses, through our eyes, ears, mouth, nose, touch, whether it's through our thinking, whether it's through our intellectual ability, or whether it's through our heart and emotions. In all these aspects, we want to act so that it is pleasing to Krishna. Now, we may not be perfect. We're definitely not perfect. So if we're not perfect, then it's a journey of trying to achieve that state of consciousness. That with my mind, body, and words, in every way, I am trying to act so that it is pleasing to Krishna. And pleasing to Krishna can be extended to pleasing Hari, Guru, Vaishnav, Bhagavata Gita, pleasing all these personalities. In this way, I'm living a life that's in line, that's congruent with Krishna and his blessings. And then our life becomes a blessing. And in this way, we will be able to live even in this world very, very happily. Prabhupada then continues. Discretion is the better part of valor, and one must learn to discriminate between actions which may be pleasing to the Lord and those which may not be pleasing to the Lord. So using our power of discrimination is very, very important, especially in terms of pleasing the Supreme Lord. Now, here also we should not take this out of context in relation to the few verses that we've covered. Because we are living on one perspective of life. And therefore our power of discrimination to see right and wrong is relative to how we are perceiving the situation and on the dimension we are living, or even the level of Krishna consciousness that we're living on. So we always also have to keep in mind that what we're seeing may not be the truth of actually what is happening, or the truth from Krishna's perspective in terms of what does Krishna want? What is Krishna's hand in that situation? Is Krishna instrumental in this situation? Is this Krishna's desire for whatever Krishna desires in terms of the outcome? Maybe Krishna wants to teach a certain lesson. Maybe Krishna wants this to go in a certain direction. So we want to always keep that in mind, that even though Prabhupada is sharing that we should discriminate between good and bad, our understanding of good and bad may not be proper from a different perspective, at least from Krishna's perspective. So we always want to keep that in mind, and therefore pray to Krishna to reveal to us what would be the appropriate perspective, and or pray to Krishna to guide us in how best to act in such a situation. We can take shelter of chanting the holy names. Like if we find His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, whenever he would give the example, even like in Juhu, as a temple president, people would come to him for complaints of different situations, and he would hear them. So let's say they come Wednesday, and he would hear them, and then he would tell them, "You please come back on Monday." Now, Sunday, it was a 24-hour kirtan. I think it was 12 hours. It was 12-hour kirtan slots that Prabhupada wanted. In fact, Prabhupada had told them to have 24 hours. And they said, no, but Prabhupada, that's not impossible. That's impossible. There was so many services, etc. Prabhupada said, okay, 12 hours. So then they agreed, 12 hours. Tamakrishna Maharaj said Prabhupada was an expert negotiator like that. So they had 12-hour kirtans, and everybody had to attend a 12-hour kirtan. So in that 12-hour kirtan associated with the holy names, the holy name would reveal the answers. So Maharaj said that then on Monday, when they would come back to him, they would say, no, we got our answer. Okay, sorted. Problem solved. So this is how he would solve his problems, with Krishna as the solver, not me and my abilities and my intellectual discriminative power that I am good, I can solve this, I know what's best, I know the situation. We really want to try to be instruments in the hand of Krishna, and let Krishna use us to guide, help, or reveal his plan accordingly. But for that, we need to be connected. For that, we need to be Krishna conscious. For that, we have to have pure devotion to Krishna. We have to be instruments. Otherwise, it is not possible. If we see, and that's why the Pandavas are glorified, because the Pandavas and Arjuna specifically was in the hand of Krishna. They were used as instruments to reveal Krishna's plan. An action is thus judged by the Lord's pleasure or displeasure. So as we were discussing, this is the fundamental basis of judging a situation. Not right or wrong, not what you think or not what I think, but based on the Lord's pleasure. Is the Lord pleased by this situation, by this event, by this circumstance, by my action, by my thinking, etc.? And again, this is not, I think the Lord is pleased. No, take your thinking, go into the closet, close it, complete your sentence, then you can come out. It requires purification of heart. It requires advancement of Krishna consciousness. It requires loving Krishna. Without that loving connection with Krishna, then everything that we think, we act, we do is mental concoction, as the Bhagavatam describes. And as long as we're acting on the mental platform, mental plane, we are under the three modes of material nature. And as long as we are under three modes of material nature, the consequence is suffering. Prabhupada then continues, there is no room for personal wounds. We must always be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. Such action is called yoga, karmashu, kaushalam, or actions performed which are linked with the Supreme Lord. That is the art of doing a thing perfectly. So this is this purport that Prabhupada is sharing is summarized in that last statement. It's the art of doing a thing perfectly. If you want to learn how to act perfectly in every situation of life from your perspective, and how to respond to every situation in life, good or bad, then you have to learn this art that Prabhupada is sharing in this purpose. Starting right from the first sentence where Prabhupada is laying the law, nature's law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. That's the basic, grossest law. And above this law, there's other principles and laws that Krishna lays and probably is outlining very systematically, very, very profoundly this law, this art. So we should study this purport again and again, go through it. And if we live our life according to this purport, individually, collectively, and globally, we can transform our own life, the lives of those that are around us that live according to this art and science, and globally into Vrindavan, into Goloka Vrindavan. Because this is the foundation and basis of the residents of Vrindavan. Whatever they do, whatever they sacrifice, whatever they give, everything, their whole life is given for the pleasure of Krishna. Srimati Radhavani's consciousness is my greatest pleasure is Krishna's pleasure. And even if my greatest displeasure gives Krishna pleasure, that is my greatest pleasure. This is her consciousness. What pleases Krishna? And this is love. Because love means what does the beloved wants. So if we meant to cultivate our loving service, our loving relation with Krishna, it's about putting Krishna in the center, not me. The material world means I am the center. Spiritual world means Krishna is the center. 25 and 26. Jalo kasham jale yadvan mahanto dan tyanishaya durbalam balino rajan mahanto balino mita evam balishtare yadubir mahadbir itaram bibhu yadun yadubir anyonyam bhubaran sanjaharaha. O king, as in the ocean, the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. So now we are hearing about the destruction of the Yadu clan. And in the 10th canto, this is described, how the whole Yadaverse was destroyed. Again, recollecting the previous verses. On one hand, you may read the pastime, you may see it, it's one perspective. We want to understand whether there are higher levels, and there's always higher levels. That higher level is Krishna's perspective. We want to see the world, see every situation through Krishna's eyes, and then act from Krishna's perspective. Purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the material world, the struggle of existence and survival of the fittest are laws because in the material world, there is disparity between conditioned souls due to everyone's desire to lord it over material resources. So now Prabhupada is talking about what brings us to the material world and what keeps us in the material world. And it is the desire to lord it over material resources. That those energies that we spoke about, the Prabhupada mentioned in his purport, those energies that are Krishna's energies, we want to exploit those energies. This is the ingrained defect of our consciousness. We want to enjoy. Consider, we have our senses. So therefore, I want to see beautiful things so I can enjoy. I want to taste beautiful things so I can enjoy. I want to touch beautiful things so I can enjoy. I want to exploit beautiful things, hear beautiful things so I can enjoy. It is I who want to enjoy. It is not about me giving pleasure to Krishna. The residents of Vrindavan, their consciousness was whatever they do is for Krishna's enjoyment. Like the example is given, that the gopis would decorate themselves. So in the conditioned state, I'm decorating myself for my pleasure. I may be even decorating myself to give pleasure to my beloved for my pleasure. Comes back. I'm the bottom line. In Vrindavan, the gopis, they decorate themselves simply, only to please Krishna. So that conditioning is there in the souls in this material world. Therefore, Prabhupada always uses this word, conditioned souls. We have become so habituated to this mentality that it's normal. To think otherwise, it's abnormal for the conditioned soul. Like you find, many devotees sometimes would ask this question, how to enjoy kirtan more? It's an interesting perspective of question. How to enjoy kirtan more? Kirtan is a very wonderful activity of service. So the question is, how can I enjoy kirtan more? Well, in that question is the problem. See, kirtan is not meant for your enjoyment. Kirtan is meant for the glorification of Krishna. But because we are conditioned, we come with this condition to enjoy the spiritual environment, to enjoy Krishna consciousness, to enjoy kirtan. Now, in the beginning, Krishna allows that because he's attracting you, he's bringing you in. So he allows that. Okay, you can enjoy. You happy? Yeah. Therefore, Prabhupada would, feed everyone till they, right to the, eat more, be happy. Yeah, no problem. But if you stay in that consciousness, you'll get stuck or you get derailed. You can come into the fold of Krishna consciousness with the enjoying propensity, but you quickly have to learn to stop lording it over material nature. So the more you start to cultivate the consciousness that kirtan is for the pleasure of Krishna, kirtan is for giving pleasure to Krishna, for glorifying Krishna. And however Krishna wants to reciprocate in giving me pleasure, that is his prasad, that is his mercy. It is no doubt, like we covered in last week's session, when Krishna ate that grain of rice or grain of vegetables from Draupadi's pot, he was satisfied and Durvasa Muni and his disciples were satisfied. So no doubt when Krishna is pleased, this living entities are pleased. You will also be pleased. In fact, it is described by the Acharyas that in Vrindavan, we got Radha and Krishna, and then we got their associates, intimate associates, like Lalita, Vishaka, the Manjaris. There are different groups and associates in the spiritual world that are serving Krishna. So not all devotees have the opportunity to directly serve Krishna, just like Mother Yashoda. Not everyone can approach Krishna directly and serve. Service is rendered in disciplic succession, even in the spiritual world. You serve your master, who serves their master, who serves their master, who serves their master, who serves Krishna. So for example, let's say you have to make a garland for Krishna. So you go, somebody will go and pluck the flowers. A devotee will go and pluck the flowers. One gopi will go and pluck the flowers and give the flowers to another gopi to make the flower garland. That gopi will take the flower garland and give it to another gopi to then hand the garland to one of the manjaris. The manjaris would then take that garland and offer it to Radharani to then offer that garland to Krishna. Now, materially, it seems that Radharani gets the greatest pleasure of offering this garland because she's actually doing the activity in the presence of Krishna and offering the garland. But it is described that actually when she offers the garland to Krishna and Krishna is pleased with that offering, she gets 10 million times more pleasure than Krishna in receiving that service. Who's receiving that service? She gets far more pleasure. And every servant who was involved in that service gets that pleasure, experiences that pleasure. So this is the spiritual dimension, totally different from the experience of the material world. Therefore, this conditioned state of the soul to lord it over material nature, because he's thinking, if I don't enjoy it myself, how can I be happy? I can't enjoy. It's not like, you eat the cake and somebody feels the satisfaction. It doesn't work like that in the material world. I need to eat the cake. I need to I'll get the satisfaction. If I feed you, how am I going to get full? Doesn't work in the material world, but in the spiritual, it is totally different. Prabhupada then continues, and to give facility to such imitation lords, the illusory energy of the Lord has created a disparity between conditioned living beings by creating the stronger and the weaker in every species of life. The mentality of lording it over the material nature and the creation has naturally created a disparity, and therefore the law of struggle for existence. In the spiritual, there is no such disparity, nor is there such a struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no struggle for existence because everyone there exists eternally. There is no disparity because everyone wants to render service to the Supreme Lord, and no one wants to imitate the Lord in becoming the beneficiary. The Lord, being creator of everything, including the living beings, factually is the proprietor and enjoyer of everything that be. But in the material world, by the spell of Maya or illusion, this eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is forgotten. And so the living being is conditioned under law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. So the laws that Krishna create, he creates them due to a defect that the conditioned soul has. So the law, in this case, survival of the fittest, struggle for existence, is there for a reason. Whenever you are struggling for existence, whenever you're experiencing a struggle for existence, life is just hell. You are struggling. It's so difficult. Understand why. Whenever you are impacted by those who are stronger, you are impacted in different ways. There could be different ways of getting impacted, exploited. You should understand why. And the reason is because the law is there due to the very defective mentality that we have. And that mentality that we have is to lord it over material nature. So due to our defective mentality, we are placed in the material world, in and under these laws. We are influenced by these laws. And material energy will create the circumstances and give us the results that we are due to suffer due to these these defective mentalities. So therefore we want to adjust. Therefore we want to rectify our mentality. And the desire to rectify, the intensity of how quick you want to rectify, that all depends individually upon us. Some are very slow learners. Some want to go to the school of hard knocks. Some want to, quickly rectify the situation. So we all on different timelines of learning. Every one of us are learning how to rectify this conditioning, how to rectify this consciousness. We all need to recognize that this consciousness is there in every one of us. And if we really look deep, we'll see it's there. That we want to exploit the resources. We want to lord over the Lord's resources in different ways. It's interesting, Prabhupada in one of the purports in the Bhagavatam, in relation to this lording mentality. So he gives the example. I remember one time and this example is also in relation to the example I'm sharing. One time we were going door to door in Mayfair. So we opened one door, and the host, invited us. The owner of the house invited us, got us sitting, and immediately and he obviously saw we are Hare Krishnas. So immediately he started to say, "Oh, so your Krishna is a playboy." Now we know there are many pictures of Krishna with many gopis around. And immediately when he naturally said that, the basis of that is that he wanted to be the Lord. Oh, Krishna is a playboy. Why can't I do that? I can also have many girls, many wives to enjoy. And out of ignorance, he was obviously making that point. So then I was making the point to him that actually Krishna is the Supreme Lord and everything belongs to him. So I started with that basis to say, okay, do you believe Krishna is God? Because if you don't believe Krishna is God, then obviously there's no use discussing this point because it's not going to go anywhere. So he said, yeah, I believe Krishna is God, but how can Krishna do this then? So then I said, okay, if you believe Krishna is the Supreme Lord, Krishna is God and he owns everything. Everything within this creation belongs to him. Yes, okay. The body that you have belongs to him. Yes. The body that your wife has belongs to him. Yes. You, the soul, belongs to him. Yes. That soul in your wife's body also belongs to him. Yes. So if the soul and the bodies are all Krishna's, then you are actually the playboy because you are enjoying Krishna's property. Therefore, Prabhupada says illicit or licit is all illicit because we are all exploiting Krishna's resources and energies. And we need to learn how to gradually, and the Vedas will help us gradually through Varnashra system, through the marriage system, etc. It's all helping us to come to the platform and to appreciate that everything we have is given by Krishna and it's for Krishna's pleasure and not our pleasure. And when we are able to eventually come to that level, becoming free from this desire to lord it over material nature, we will then come to the spiritual platform where there is, as Prabhupada says, no struggle for survival, and there is no suffering. It's a totally, totally different experience. And if we do not learn that lesson, then just like Kamsa, you will get this fist coming to you through material nature again and again and again. You'll be fisted again and again and again until you learn the lesson. Yes, Krishna, sorry, I need to offer everything to you, including myself, is for your pleasure. 27. Desha kalartha yuktani riktapo pashamani cha aranti smaratas chitam govinda bihitani me. Up to this point, we see Arjuna sharing the different pastimes where he was grateful to Krishna, seeing how Krishna was instrumental and in his life in every way. And he's feeling that void and separation of Krishna. Now we're going to see how Arjuna fills that void that is there in his heart. That void that is there in every living entity's heart. The lack of love for Krishna. So how does Arjuna complete or fill this void? Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Very, very important. Arjuna is making the point that due to the void, due to different ill mentality, defective mentalities, we suffer. We forget Krishna. Now, how to bring Krishna into our life? Arjuna is saying, I can fill that void, that same relation I had with Krishna, I can fill that now through the instructions of Krishna. And why? Because these instructions of Krishna, they can relieve the burning sensation in our heart. They can resolve all the issues in our heart. And most importantly, in all circumstances of time and space. That means Bhagavad Gita, which are instructions of Krishna, can guide and help us in every circumstances throughout all time, throughout all space. There is no circumstance, and there will never be a time when you will not find a solution and an answer from Bhagavad Gita. Very, very profound. If you understand this, if you get this, it's like getting a key to the spiritual world. It's getting a key to bliss. It's getting a key to every solution. Just knowing this is revelation, is profound, is blissful, because we know we have a solution. Tapping into it is even more blissful. At least we know we have a solution. Whenever there's difficulties, whenever there's challenges, whenever you have a question, why? Bhagavad Gita has a solution. When you apply that knowledge, then you get the benefit. Purport. Prabhupada says, herein, Arjuna refers to the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. The Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and the Vedanta Sutras. It is put within the study of the great historical epic Mahabharata, which was especially prepared for the less intelligent class, and namely the women, laborers, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and higher sections of the Vaishyas. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. Very, very profound. So Bhagavatam is teaching us about Bhagavad Gita through Arjuna, and here we are getting a solution to all our problems, all our mental agonies, all our difficulties, all our issues. It is there in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita, being non-different from Krishna, can also give you solutions at different levels of your consciousness. If you are at a point of A, Bhagavad Gita will give you a solution. When you now grow to point of B, Bhagavad Gita will give you a different solution, even from the same verse and same instruction. For example, Prabhupada writes that if you study, not read, if you study all 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita every single day, normally we take 2 years to study Bhagavad Gita, chapter by chapter. But Prabhupada says if you study every single 18 chapters every single day, Prabhupada says you will find something new every single day. This is the position of Bhagavad Gita. So we have this blessing. Prabhupada then continues. The merciful Lord left behind him the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when he's not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic scripture, sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. Just as Krishna incarnated or descended himself 5,000 years ago and was personally present, Bhagavad Gita, Grantaraj Avatar, it's the scriptural incarnation, like Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita also, are the personal incarnations of Krishna. Therefore, we say Grantaraj Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Krishna incarnating in the form of a book. Krishna can incarnate in the form of prasad. Krishna can incarnate in the form of the holy name. So Krishna can incarnate in any different way, with any different feature, facet Krishna wants to incarnate. And we should take advantage. We should have firm faith, and we should take advantage and associate with Krishna in these different ways. If we associate with Krishna, that we can see Krishna's mercy manifesting in so many ways. Krishna loves us and he wants us to come to him. We need to be in contact with Krishna. So Krishna is making so many arrangements to be in contact with him. And we want to take advantage. We want to be intelligent to take advantage of Krishna in these different ways. And in this way, help others, because the solution is given to us by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada continues. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of material existence can verily easily take advantage of Bhagavad Gita. Note, it is the faithful human being. We have to have that faith. And with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. Why? Because Arjuna didn't need it. Arjuna's name was spotless. Arjuna means spotless. Arjuna was a perfect, surrendered servant of Krishna. In fact, he was a friend of Krishna. Being a friend of Krishna means he was a pure devotee of Krishna. He didn't need Bhagavad And we know in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna says, when the conch shells are blown, Arjuna was ready to pick up the Gandiva bow and shoot his arrows. So Arjuna was ready to kill. But that was not Krishna's desire at that point. Therefore, Krishna had to bring Arjuna into apparent illusion. So therefore, at that point, Krishna brings Arjuna into apparent Maya, and Arjuna says, but hold on, Krishna. Okay, Krishna, take me to the middle of the battlefield. I just want to see who's here. Acharyas explain, why did Arjuna want to see? Even Krishna tells Arjuna, why you want to see who's here? Obviously, your enemies are here. They're warriors, kill. But this is all Krishna's arrangement so that Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. For who? Not for Arjuna, for you. So therefore, we need to be grateful to Krishna and take advantage. In Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to 1, the Supreme Lord, 2, the living being, 3, nature, 4, time and space, and 5, the process of activity. Of these, the Supreme Lord, the living being, are qualitatively one. The difference between the two has been analyzed as the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert matter, displaying the interaction of the 3 modes of nature. And eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of material nature. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later the subject matter are elaborated in the Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. Out of the 5 subjects, the Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature and time and space are eternal. But the living entity, nature and time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any control. The Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. Material activity of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transferal into spiritual quality. Thus, it can cease its material qualitative reactions. Both the Lord and the living entity are cognition, and both have the sense of identification, of being conscious as a living force. But the living being under the condition of material nature called Matata must identify himself as being different from the Lord. The whole scheme of Vedic wisdom is targeted to the aim of eradicating such a misconception and thus liberating the living being from the illusion of material identification. When such an illusion is eradicated by knowledge and renunciation, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but such a sense in the living being is a sort of wishful desire only. This difference in consciousness is the distinction of the two identities, namely the Lord and the living being. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living being. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. The whole instruction Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. So in the middle, Prabhupada makes a very profound statement. The material activity of the living being is beginless, but it can be rectified by transferal into spiritual quality. Thus, it can cease its material qualitative reaction. When we understand the science of Bhagavad Gita, when we understand Krishna's position, when we understand our position, and we come out of this misidentification that I'm this body and I'm the enjoyer, that Krishna, Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the enjoyer, he's the controller, he's the proprietor, then whatever activities I perform, even though they may be apparently material activities, they have the nature of spiritual influence. So any material activity can become spiritualized when you have the proper consciousness backing that activity. It is not the activity that becomes material or spiritual. It is the consciousness behind that activity that delivers the consequence of matter or spirit, and thus the impact accordingly. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord and the living beings are both described as Sanatan or eternal, and the Lord's abode, far beyond the material sky, is also described as Sanatan. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, in the process which can help a living being to approach the Lord's abode. Where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited is called Sanatan Dharma. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being freed from the misconception of material identification. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue to how to achieve this stage of perfection. So you see how Prabhupada is emphasizing this point, this misidentification. This is me. This is very, 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 very deeply rooted in our consciousness. And we need to really practice Krishna Consciousness nicely to transcend this defective consciousness. Srila Bhakti Maharaj was hearing one devotee singing, and this devotee was singing a song, and the meaning of the song was in relation to Srimati Radharani. He was singing, oh Srimati Radharani, please wake up. Oh Radharani, please wake up. So the song was like waking up Radharani. So Srila Bhakti Maharaj went and told this devotee, first you should wake up. Then you should learn to wake up Radharani. Meaning, if you're thinking I'm this body, what's the use of you singing such song? It's total waste of time. It's sahajya. So first you wake yourself up. First you come to the realization that I'm not this body, I'm a spirit soul. And not just intellectually, realize that. So if we just try to ponder on this point, realize I'm not this body. What to talk about what's happening around me? You know, whether it's at my work, whether it's at my family, whether it's in the community, whether it's in South Africa, or whether it's in the globe, or whether it's in the institution. You know, the chaos, the mess is right here in me with my identification. So let me first sort my identification. I may be trying to sort everyone's problems out there, and yet I'm thinking I'm this body. Total waste of time. So rather first focus one's attention on that misidentification. Try to purify that illusion, that misconception. And when that misconception is identified, now you'll be able to be of value to yourself, to your family members, to the country, to the world, to the universe, to Krishna, and to the institution. So really we need to work on ourselves through the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, through the process of Krishna consciousness. The Prabhupada continues. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from misconception of material identification. And Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called in different stages: fruitive activity, empiric philosophy, and devotional service, up to transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all of the above items in relation with the Lord. Prescribed duties of human beings, as directed in the Vedas, can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of devotional service to the Lord. As long as one is engaged in researching the solution of the problems of life, his knowledge is called jnana, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in devotional service of the Lord. Knowledge is great. Application of that knowledge is really what devotional service is about. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the problem of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of matter, the body and the mind, change for another term of material existence, which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries. And Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge, which had been imparted to him during the battlefield, during the Kurukshetra battle. 28. Suto vacha evam chintayato jisno Krishna pada sarorusho Krishna pada saroruham soharidena digandena santashid vimmalamati. Sutta Goswami said, thus been deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. He experienced the direct physical presence of Krishna. This we all have. This opportunity we all have. By associating with Krishna in any form, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's the Srimad Bhagavatam, even his pictures, the holy name, the pure devotees, the deity form of Krishna, Krishna Prasad. These are all aspects of Krishna, that Krishna is physically present through these aspects of his manifestation to purify us, to eventually allow us to gradually come to this point where we can feel his direct physical appearance. Purport. Since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as yogic trance. The Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. The Lord is like the sun, and the sun's appearance means immediate dissipation of darkness or ignorance. And the Lord's appearance within the mind of a devotee can at once drive away the miserable material effects. Lord Chaitanya has therefore recommended constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord for protection from all contamination of the material world. The feeling of separation from the Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee, but because it is in connection with the Lord, it has a specific transcendental effect which pacifies the heart. Feelings of separation are also sources of transcendental bliss, and they are never comparable to material contaminated material feelings of separation. So externally, it seems Arjuna was suffering, but because he was thinking of Krishna and Krishna is physically present there, he was experiencing Krishna's presence. So we also have that opportunity to constantly cultivate the habit of thinking of Krishna, his name, form, pastimes, qualities, entourage, etc. And in this way, become completely absorbed, infused with Krishna and Krishna consciousness, so that when Krishna becomes pleased with our efforts in this way, he will manifest himself and we will feel his presence. 29. Vasudevangri Anudhyana Paribrim Hitara Ramhasa Bhaktya Nirmati Teshesha Kasaya Tishano Arjunam. Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion. And as a result, all the trash in his thoughts subsided. Harsh word, but true. All the trash. Same thing can happen to us. If we associate with Krishna, constantly remember Krishna's instructions, slowly the devotion will increase in our heart. As the devotion increases in our heart, all the trash in our consciousness will be eradicated, subdued. Material desires in the mind are the trash of material contamination. So we can pray to Krishna, my Lord, I know I'm a rubbish bin. I got all this trash in my mind, in my consciousness. Please help me purify this trash. Material desires, any form of desire, that means any form of lauding desire, any form of desire to enjoy separate from Krishna, we should understand that is trash. And trash cannot exist on a spiritual platform. Contamination cannot exist on a spiritual platform. Where the sun is, there cannot be darkness. So Krishna consciousness means the process of untrashing, purifying, removing the trash. The biggest trash to the smallest trash. Prabhupada says, wet stool, dry stool, that's all stool. So big trash, small trash, it is trash. We want to practice with determination, with sincerity, with faith, with vigor, with vitality, with seriousness, the process of Krishna consciousness, so that this trash, the biggest, the smallest, the minutest trash is destroyed, removed, so that we can become qualified to be pure servants of Krishna. By such contamination, the living being is faced with so many compatible and incompatible things that discourage the very existence of spiritual identity. This is what this trash is doing. Where the favorable, unfavorable things it's delivering, it's designed to discourage the very existence of spiritual identity. So a material desire may give you apparently wonderful results or not wonderful results. The end result is exactly the same. It discourages you and your identity on a spiritual platform. So therefore it's unfavorable. Therefore it is called anartha, that which is not wanted. Birth after birth, the conditioned soul is entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing elements, which are all false and temporary. They accumulate due to our reactions to material desires. But when we get in touch with the transcendental Lord in his variegated energies by devotional service, the naked forms of all material desires become manifest, and the intelligence of the living being is specified in its true color. As soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instructions of the Lord, as they were inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all contamination, material contamination. if we are seriously practicing Krishna consciousness, we will be experiencing this gradually, but for sure. Material desires will begin to wane more and more and more. Our heart will become purified more and more and more. Devotion will increase more and more and more until we are completely purified. Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. We are becoming completely purified by this process of devotional service. That love can then fully blossom in our heart, and we are then reinstated in our eternal loving service to Krishna. Text study. Gitam Bhagavata Jnanam Yat Tat Sangram Madhurani Kalakarmo Tamo Rudam Punar Adyagamat Prabhu. Because of the Lord's pastimes and activities and Arjuna's feeling of separation from him, it appeared that Arjuna forgot the instructions left by the personality of Godhead. But factually, this was not the case. And again, he became the Lord of his senses. Purport. A conditioned soul is enwrapped in his fruitive activities by the force of eternal time. But the Supreme Lord, when he incarnates on the earth, is not influenced by kala or material conception of past, present, future. The activities of the Lord are eternal, and they are manifest by his Atma Maya, or eternal potency. All the pastimes and or activities of the Lord are internal in nature, are spiritual in nature. But to the layman, they appear to be on the same level with material activities. It also appeared that Arjuna and the Lord were engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the other party was also engaged. But factually, the Lord was executing his mission of incarnation and association with his eternal friend Arjuna. Therefore, such apparently material activities of Arjuna did not drive him away from his transcendental position, but on the contrary, revived his consciousness of the songs of the Lord as he sung them personally. This revival of consciousness is assured by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 1865 as follows. Man mana bhavamad bhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mam evasyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. One should think of the Lord always. Mind should not forget him. One should become a devotee of the Lord and offer obeisance to him. One who lives in that fashion becomes undoubtedly endowed with the blessings of the Lord by achieving the shelter of his lotus feet. There is nothing to doubt about the eternal truth, because Arjuna was his confidential friend. The secret was disclosed to him. Arjuna had no desire to fight with his relatives, but he fought on the mission of the Lord. He was always engaged in the execution. He was always engaged in execution of his mission only, and therefore, after the Lord's departure, he remained in the same transcendental position, even though it appeared that he had forgotten all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore adjust the activities of life in pace with the mission of the Lord. And by doing this, one is sure to return back home, back to Godhead. This is the highest perfection of life. So Prabhupada gave us the art of perfecting an activity. And now Prabhupada is giving us the highest perfection of life. One should therefore adjust the activities of life in pace with the mission of the Lord. And by doing so, one is sure to return back home, back to God. We're all busy. We all have activities. We all have duties. We all in this material world condition. We have to adjust, understand how to adjust, discriminate how to adjust. We need to put Krishna and his activities, his mission as priority in our life, not forsaking and neglecting our duties, but at the same time understanding who we are, what is our goal, what is the mission. So we don't want to be neglectful and irresponsible, but while performing our duties responsibly, we want to expertly adjust our life, putting Krishna as priority and making sure that we start to fill our life with those priorities that are important in relation to the mission of the Lord and our relationship with the Lord. And in this way, progress to the spiritual world, back home, back to Godhead. 31. Shoko Brahma Sampatya Sanchina Devata Samshaya Lina Prakriti Ne Gunyad Alingad Vad Asambhava. Because of his possessing spiritual assets, the doubts of duality were completely cut off. Thus, he was freed from the three modes of material nature and placed in transcendence. There was no longer any chance of his becoming entangled in birth and death, for he was freed from material form. This same result we can achieve. Purport. Doubts of duality begins from the misconception of the material body, which is accepted as the self by less intelligent persons. The most foolish part of our ignorance is our identifying this material body with the self. I'm going to repeat that. The most foolish part of our ignorance is our identifying this material body with the self. Everyone in relation with the body is ignorantly accepting as our own. Doubts due to misconception of the self and mind. In other words, my body, my relatives, my property, my house, my children, my wealth, my country, my community, and hundreds and thousands of similar illusory contemplations cause bewilderment for the conditioned soul. By assimilating the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, one is sure to be released from such bewilderment, because real knowledge is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, is everything, including oneself. Everything is a manifestation of his potency as part and parcel. The potency and the potent are non-different, so the conception of duality is at once mitigated by the attainment of perfect knowledge. As soon as Arjuna took up the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, expert as he was, he could at once eradicate the material conception of Lord Krishna, his eternal friend. He could realize that the Lord was still present before him by his instruction, by his form, by his pastime, by his qualities, and everything else related to him. He could realize that Lord Krishna, his friend, was still present before him by his transcendental presence in the different non-dual energies, and there was no question of attainment of association of the Lord by another change of body under the influence of time and space. By attainment of absolute knowledge, one can, in association with the Lord constantly, even in this present life, simply by hearing, chanting, thinking of, and worshipping the Supreme Lord. By attainment of absolute knowledge, one can be in association of the Lord, association with the Lord constantly, even in this present life, simply by hearing, chanting, thinking of, and worshipping the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is making it very clear, even no matter what our situation is in this current life, in this present life, we can associate directly with the Lord constantly. How? By simply constantly keeping in touch with hearing, chanting, thinking of, and worshipping the Supreme Lord. So that's the practice. Anushilanam. Anyabilasita sunyam. Jnana karma anubitam. Anukulyana. Anukulyana Krishna anushilanam. Anushilanam means constant, no break. I'm engaged in devotional service. Okay, now I need to take a holiday. No, there's no question of holiday for devotional service. Susukam kartam. If devotional service is blissful, why do you want to take a holiday? It means we're not practicing the process properly. So it's really about understanding, cultivating, practicing nicely so that we can begin to experience these same aspects of revelation that Arjuna is experiencing. This is the true practice of spiritual life. It's not some airy-fairy mythological type of understanding. No, it's really a genuine practice and a process that means understanding, our foolishness and how to come out of our foolishness. Prabhupada continues, one can see him, one can feel his presence even in this present life, simply by understanding the Advaya Gyan Lord, or the absolute Lord, through the process of devotional service, which begins with hearing about him. And remember, with Prabhupada's instructions comes his blessings, comes his potency. So there's no question why we cannot achieve perfection. Lord Chaitanya says that simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can at once wash off the dust on the mirror of the pure consciousness. And as soon as that dust is removed, one is at once freed from all material conditions. To become free from the material conditions means to liberate the soul. As soon as one is therefore situated in absolute knowledge, his material conception of life is removed, or he emerges from a false conception of life. Thus, the function of the pure soul is revived in spiritual realization. This practical realization of the living being is made possible due to his becoming free from the reactions of the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, ignorance. By the grace of the Lord, a pure devotee is at once raised to the platform of the Absolute, and there is no chance of the devotees becoming materially entangled again in conditional life. One is not able to feel the presence of the Lord in all circumstances until one is endowed with the required transcendental vision made possible by devotional service prescribed in revealed scriptures. Arjuna had attained this stage long before on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And when he apparently felt the absence of the Lord, he at once took shelter of the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. And thus again, he was placed in his original position. This is the position of Vishoka, or the stage of being freed from all grief and existence. So Prabhupada is also now giving us the solution to become free from all grief and anxieties. Take shelter of the holy name, really understand Nam Tattva, glories of the holy name, understand the glory of devotional service, take seriously the practice of chanting the holy names. And in this way, let us reap the greatest benediction and blessing that Krishna and his pure devotee Srila Prabhupada has come to bestow upon us. And thus ends this set of verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. Vantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Upramande Hari Hari Bol. Any questions or comments anyone has? Shamananda Prabhu says, thank you for the Mayfair pastime. All credits is to Krishna, and in our case, Srila Prabhupada as well. We are just instruments to carry out some tasks for Krishna. Yes. And while we're carrying out those tasks, we also have a duty to purify our existence while we're carrying out those tasks. So service is important, but we should also not forget the service of ourselves, purifying ourselves, because we want to offer Krishna the best of service. And that we can do by engaging in service, but also very seriously purifying our life to offer greater and pure service. Nalini Kanta Prabhu says, thank you, Prabhu, for outstanding class. Haribol, thank you very much. All right, we'll just wait a few more seconds if there's any other comments. Nonetheless says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the Krishna Katha, beautiful transcendental class. I really like the concept of higher principle. It is a very powerful practical steps we can do to increase. It's a very powerful practical steps we can do to increase our devotion to Krishna. Yes, and Prabhupada's sharing that We can see in today's purports, it's like very, very powerful purports that can help us eradicate our illusion forever. And this is in the first canto. If we take these purports, take the instruction that Srila Prabhupada is sharing and really seriously apply it in our life, we will find as we move to the next verses, the next chapters, the next cantos, the next pastimes, our experience will become more and more profound, more and more exciting, more and more blissful. And if we start again Srimad Bhagavatam from the beginning, it will be a totally different experience. It's a never-ending ecstatic experience. So even this journey of purification, we should see it. We should enjoy the process of purification. We want love of Krishna, which is the destination. But you cannot wait for the destination to be blissful. You want to enjoy the process of purification. And the process of Krishna consciousness is susukam. It is blissful. Chanting, hearing, dancing, feasting, it's blissful. So the more we become absorbed, the more we become focused, the more we accept these instructions from Srila Prabhupada, it will revolutionize our heart for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. Jagannath Priya Prabhu, thank you, Hare Krishna. Your feedback, thank you for today's most transcendental class. Thank you very much. We will end here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari.